NFL's minimums or maximums, I should say, for the test are 30% of what Major League Baseball's is and other of the other professional sports, and 10% of what the World Olympic Doping Association's standards are, So that to me says that, and the fact that it's literally, well, if this was labeled one and this was labeled the other, we wouldn't even be having that. Those are technicalities. Those are, that's arguing, did you go 35 or 36 in the 35 zone? You know what I mean? Like, yes, you may have broken the law, but I just think that, I don't know. That's one of the things, those details, when they came out, I said that has to be addressed regardless of Josh Gordon, just because it's ridiculous that this much time has been spent on this case. And I don't just mean on radio and TV. I mean in the NFL. I mean arbitration and lawyers. How much money has been spent on the case of Josh Gordon's pot suspension / appeal since this thing started? Because whatever it is, I'm guessing that I could name 150 things off the top of my head that we could have spent that on without even batting an eye. Like, and keep going. You know what I mean?
That money could feed a bunch of school kids.
Some homeless people would be living nice right about now. Instead, we're spending 6 months arguing a 0.3 difference in the pot level of a guy's. I'm just saying. Sometimes the fight is longer than what you're fighting over. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And this is one of those cases. This is definitely one of those cases, man. So it'll be interesting when it comes down. And I mentioned last week what you said for the timing of the Ray Rice thing. It just kind of really, because no matter what we say here in Cleveland, nationally, they don't care that Josh Gordon. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody last night that had no clue that Josh Gordon was in stage 3. That he had multiple failures. Just thought it was to the average person. Ray Rice, domestic violence, 2-game suspension. Josh Gordon smoked a joint, lost a year of his season. And that, to the average person, that's the story that they hear, even though we know all the intricacies of it. Truly, I keep coming across people that go, oh man, I did not know that. And well, that makes more sense. But to the general public, and that's what the NFL is dealing with here, to the general public, pot bad, beating your woman, not as bad.
And the problem with that is the same kind of stigmata that hangs over our military. And, unfortunately, a lot of guys are treated the same way in the military. You bat your girlfriend or your wife around, you get counseling. They catch you drinking, you get counseling. You get caught with one joint, you spend 30 years in Leavenworth or Portsmouth Naval Prison if you're a Marine or a Navy guy. It's just, I don't understand it. And I've seen a lot of guys, when I was in uniform, I saw a lot of guys get taken away in cuffs for possession.
That's nuts.
Whether they did time at Fort Carson or Leavenworth or anywhere else, they were in jail for one joint.
Man, I'll tell you, nuts, man. But, so here we sit. It could be anytime for the next 2 or 3 Tuesdays, you and I will probably be talking about Josh Gordon a little bit more as we wait for this thing to happen. That's all you can do. But for the Browns, you know what? The other good thing, too, is that he is going to continue practicing, as we were just talking about. And if the suspension is not the entire season, if it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 games, whatever it is, it's still better to have gotten as much time and as much work in with both quarterbacks, with all of that going on with the new playbook and all of that. So, and hey, at least it keeps him. You talk about, hey, you don't want a guy to fall off. For now, he's able to stay busy. He's able to keep himself working. But anyways, want to continue the conversation getting to the quarterbacks, because that's the other big thing. Today, I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. I checked in with some people that were at camp as things were wrapping up. Said both quarterbacks easily had their best day of practice today. Yet, even with that being said, Brian Hoyer's day slightly better than Johnny Manziel's was, as he really seemed to step up to the challenge. And Manziel as well, both quarterbacks looked much more effective today than they have, which is good because I thought they were reaching the dead arm part of camp here the last couple of days. You've just seen a difference in the zip, especially on Hoyer's throws, just a little bit less crisp, and that's kind of his calling card is the accuracy and the quick release. So seeing both guys bounce back was good, and a lot of ado made about nothing, Bill, about Manziel getting the starting time with the ones yesterday. And oh man, the Browns are lying. They say that this was planned, but no, this is all because of the other day. Well, if that's the case, I think he would have been out there again today. Today it was back to business as usual with Hoyer out with the ones, and they also released the depth chart for this weekend with Brian Hoyer as the number 1, Manziel as the number 2. So while it's improving each and every practice for Manziel, which is what you want, a lot of it pretty much it remains the status quo. However, both quarterbacks improving. That's what you want to see. No matter who wins the job, is that both of these guys are improving and pushing each other, and it looks like they're both doing that.
And I find it very interesting that, you look at the transaction wire and that Marlon Moore was signed last week and Chandler Jones was released yesterday.
Yeah.
To me, that signals business as usual as far as the quarterbacks and the receivers are going, because if they weren't sure who was who and who was 1 and who was 2, you would see them keep a lot more receivers in camp, up to the first game and past the first preseason game, just to keep these guys getting all the work that they can before they make a decision. Now, I think Pettin shouldn't paint himself into a corner, and saying he's going to make the decision by the 3rd week. I think he should leave that open-ended and make the decision whenever he feels it's best. If he says, give me a couple of weeks, that's on him. There's no reason to be pressured into making that decision now or later. As far as I'm concerned, just because you got, superstar kid, in your back pocket doesn't mean you got to rush him in. To me, I'd rather have a guy sit for a year on the bench and watch a veteran before I throw him to the wolves,
Lots of stuff about that. Of course, Deion Sanders yesterday had some things to say. You don't learn nothing by sitting on the bench. You learn by going out there and playing. And there's some credence to what he's saying. Like, I get his point for sure. It's not that guys can't improve by playing either. But when a team has options, then that's where that becomes differently. And I get it. If they're both negligible, like if there's no negligible difference by the end of camp, then I get the philosophy of going with the younger guy and giving him his opportunity to go out there. But the fact that, and I want to go to this week, looking at Manziel getting the chance to go out there with the ones yesterday, everybody, and I mean some of the guys that I talk to on a daily basis are like, man, that's it. The momentum's rolling, man. Manziel's going to just roll this thing, man. And then he went out there and really did not look good at all in the practice, and Brian Hoyer continued to be, steady ship, business as usual. I just believe that today, everything went right back to normal today. And they said they were going to do that. I see the first 2 preseason games. I see them each starting a preseason game. I think and I think it's set up this way to give Manziel the chance to win the job. In all honesty, Hoyer starts the first one. Manziel plays with the 2s. I think they switch it up in the second one. Let Manziel start with the 1s and Hoyer plays with the 2s. That way, if Manziel goes out and has a lights out performance, it's his second preseason game, so he gets the jitters out of the way. He gets judged on the second one. If he does better with the 1s than they felt that Hoyer did the week before, then Manziel starts the 3rd preseason game, and then I think the decision is just about made. But, at this point, he still has not reached out and gotten it. And Brian Hoyer, every time he's pushed by Manziel, he pushes back, regardless of what some people want you to believe. That is the consensus. And for the most part of camp, Hoyer has won the majority of the days still. So if he was number 1 when it started, then that signals to me number 1 when he ends. But it doesn't mean that if the Browns drop 2 of the first 3 or all 3 of them, boom, just like that. Because once the move is made, it's made. And I think that's the one thing that keeps Brian Hoyer starting the season.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. You really have to look at what guys are able to contribute not just in the huddle and on the field, but in the meeting rooms. And I think Manziel's place right now is to be the student, and Hoyer's is to be the teacher, and that's the way it should be at this point in time.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that's that was my point all along. But I mean, if Manziel can go get it. I mean, and that was the thing we talked about yesterday, is that nobody had really gone and got the job yet. Today was the first day that both quarterbacks had really good days at the same time, But my thing is if even on his best throwing day, Manziel, I mean, the consensus amongst the people, at least that I trust, that were there evaluating camp today, was that Hoyer was still appreciably better on Manziel's best day. That says everything you need to know right there, that it's coming and that it will get there. But if you're trying to win some games now, you can't justify sitting the guy that is still noticeably ahead.
And not only that, I've said it for a long time. Just because you're a great quarterback in college doesn't make you a great quarterback in the NFL. The game is so much different, and you really need to learn, the intricacies of how the game is different in the NFL as opposed to even at the major college level. I've seen some guys play at the major college level that, they never cracked the starting lineup in the NFL. The main reason being that they could not make that transition. They could not take that next step. And it doesn't make them a bad person because, if they went to an Ivy League school, they're working on Wall Street, or they're working in the sciences, or they're going to med school, or they're in pre-law. They're not, they don't expect to be NFL quarterbacks. Everybody was talking about how, Fitzgerald up in Buffalo, he graduated an Ivy League school. I said, oh, yeah, big deal. I've covered the Ivy League. Just because they're smart doesn't mean they're great football players. They're competitive, but that doesn't make them NFL level.
Oh, I hear you, my man. You're listening to the Sports Fix, Dr. Football, J-Rock. We're talking a little bit about the latest with the Browns and some of the stuff coming out of camp. Talking about the receivers here. Josh Gordon going to be so key to this thing here, and I think that's going to play a part in how the quarterback decision goes down too. Gordon actually has been mixing in with the ones and the twos. They've really been rotating the various groups of the wide receivers. I mentioned this guy when camp started, and he more and more is looking, even though not so much the big day today, he has slowly been grabbing some training camp headlines, which, as we know, those can be worth only so much at this time of the year. Willie Snead at wide receiver, somebody that is really grabbing the opportunity that's been out there in front of him. He's made some electric plays, both with his hands and, more importantly, with his legs after he catches the ball. He is putting himself in that wide receiver conversation. You mentioned Chandler Jones being waived. Both of those guys were in a similar situation. Snead, thus far, has really made the most of his opportunity.
Yeah, and you're going to see some things out of this offense that you're not used to seeing because they've changed the entire thing around, and I think that's really, really a good thing. Looking at some of the technology that's going on, I will be interested to see how they use the tablets, and these are not just regular Microsoft Surfaces or iPads. These are strictly for You can't post to Twitter or Facebook while you're on the sideline with these things. They're strictly for looking at pictures. And I think that's the big change that people were waiting for. And I saw the Giants using it quite a bit, and on the sidelines. And one of the principal guys behind that for the Giants and for the whole league is John Berger, who's the IT coordinator for the Giants. He's been pushing for this for about 3 years. My last conversation with him before leaving the East Coast, in 2011 at the 2011 camp was, when we start to use tablets the way you guys are using tablets, then we'll be in the 21st century. Finally, it only took 3 years from, me having one at camp in 2011 to, the NFL starting to use it.
Yeah, and I mentioned, talking about that technology, the chips in the shoulder pads. I mentioned it last week talking about those. Those are, I'm telling you, people say, oh, well, video games is not the real thing on the field. They're getting closer and closer every day. At that point, and they say that this year, they won't have the real-time information. It'll be day after or whatever. But after this year, they will be able to get the stuff real-time, where literally your coaches will be able to look at, and it's all going to be in the cloud, which I can't wait for CloudGate, by the way.